This is William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. Welcome to the College of Complexes, being held at Barbeck's Restaurant at 8949 Garland Road, Dallas, Texas. Gently embracing the east side of White Rock Lake. When I entered, I was greeted like coming home to Grandma's house, warm and friendly. When visiting the Barbeck's Restaurant, tell them you want your reservations for the next College of Complex class.
Well, welcome to the College of Complexes. This is our 224th meeting since we started in February of 2009, so that's pretty good. Actually, it started in Chicago in 1951 for the purpose of solving all the world's problems. They're still working at it. We put a speaker on every week, a different subject. We require our speakers to take a position on an issue or express a point of view. They have to be for or against something, don't care what it is. We give them an hour to make a presentation. If they go over an hour, we cut them off. If anybody interrupts the speaker, we remind the interrupter that we only listen to one fool at a time. That's one of our rules. And then we have questions and answers, not speeches. And then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everybody in the audience who wants to gets 5 minutes at this podium to respond to what the speaker said, for or against. And then our speaker gets the last word, gets a comment and close the meeting. That's how it's done. So, but before we put our speaker on, are there any announcements? Now's the time for announcements if you have any. Anybody have any announcements they want? Do you have any announcements?
On the list. Anybody not on the list?
Yeah. Mailing list. Yeah. Well, it's a email list, so we can put you on that if you like. Oh, she started out with, "Would you announce?" I said, "Come on up here."
I just want to mention that we have the Democratic Club, Lake Highlands White Rock Club, meets every third Saturday morning at C.C. Young. And for those of you who don't know about it, I just thought you ought to know that we do that. It's quite an active club. We've been going for a long time. So if you get interested in democratic politics, you might enjoy knowing more about our club. It's this Saturday.
Saturday mornings.
Saturday morning at 10 o'clock.
At 10 o'clock. So we missed it this Saturday. Next Saturday. It'll be next Saturday. All right. So you get there at 10, you get here at whatever. Any other announcements? Now's the chance. Anyone have any announcements that you want to make? Now's your chance. Don't let it go by. Well, anyway, next week we have Hobie Huckel. He's an organizer of Dallas County Democratic Party. He's going to talk about his changing Dallas ISD into a home rule district, a bad idea, which he thinks it is. And he'll expound on that, and it's on your itinerary that you have there. I don't want to read all this to you, but it should be interesting, and that'll be next week. Any other announcements? Jim, you got any announcements? You got any announcements? All right, he doesn't have any. Anyway, be kind to our server and everything. That's the main thing. You have an announcement? No. Oh, okay, just checking. That's the end of the announcements. Our speaker tonight is Stuart Nelson. He's a PhD, Agnotology, is it?
Agnotology.
Agnotology. I got to say it right. A longtime activist, researcher, featured guests and several talk radio hosts, and a member of the volunteer team that rebuilt the Branch Davidian church. He's going to expose a very different view of the horrific siege we saw unfold 2 years ago in Waco. Our so-called media reported government has over and over again. Finally, Stuart will show how this kind of attack has happened and will happen again if we, the people, don't stop those who deliberately shock the nation's psyche to order to feed their obsession for power and wealth. We must never forget all the victims of April 19, 1993 in Waco, Texas, including you. So the title tonight is What Really Happened at Waco and Will It Happen Again? So please give a very, very warm welcome to our speaker, Stuart Nelson.
Okay, thank you everybody. In doing the research and homework for this, I have to apologize in advance. There's no way I can cover any of this adequately in 1 hour. This is a 24-hour, 32-hour process to really study everything that went on in Waco. And that doesn't even include everything in Oklahoma City and everything else that's happened since then up to today. So at the end, there will be questions and answers and all this stuff, like you said, and there's people here in the room that know as much or more about Waco that is as much or more as I do or more. So let me get started. So I may have to blow through some of this pretty fast. So let me start off by saying I didn't know who the Branch Davidians were when all this went down. I'd never heard of them. I stopped in Waco to get gas driving through. I mean, yeah, and it was a place to gas up, maybe stop in West and get some kolaches or something, but that was it. So I'd never heard of those people. The reason this is sensitive to me is because back in the 1980s, I was part of a small Christian community out in Lindale, Texas called Last Days Ministries. Now, we had teachers that we liked, Bob Phillips and David Wilkerson and some of these other well-known evangelists and all this, or preachers or whatever, and all of them had deeper stuff in the Word and everything, when we were studying. And all of us have had somebody that we respected, I think, pretty much growing up. Anyway, so that's why Waco touched me. I don't agree with the Branch Davidians. I'm not one. It doesn't matter. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof is supposed to be the law. So, well, let me gotta turn it on. Okay, BATF. Let me see if I can get this working here. Okay. Still not working. There we go. Okay. The operation on April 19th, on February 28th, 1993, when the first attack happened at the Branch Davidian church community, not a compound, it was a church community, was called Operation Showtime. Now, why did they attack the Branch Davidians? Well, the ATF was under serious, at the time, the BATF itself was under serious investigation for sexual assaults and harassment of female ATF agents. Testimony from female agents before Congress about the assaults by multiple male agents, and this happened numerous times. So the BATF was already being investigated. The BATF had already brutalized hundreds of Americans, stolen property, wrecked homes and businesses, cracked heads, shot innocent people, and worse. Lawsuits were beginning to expose the criminal behavior of the BATF, that they don't follow the law. But it takes really deep pockets to go after these guys. I mean, you've got to come up with $100,000 and actually find an attorney of integrity to get anything done. So most people are just going to be victimized. I don't have that kind of money. Okay, Congress was considering disbanding or seriously cutting funding of the BATF. So the BATF had to have a diversion, so they started hunting for a showtime to remind Americans why they are so needed badly. Now, the Bureau, this is from the latest budgetary 2014. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. The legislation contains $1.1 billion for the ATF, $10 million increase above the previous year. Now read this. It also includes a prohibition on funding to transfer firearms to known members of drug cartels, such as those transfers that occurred under the Fast and Furious program. That's on a government website. All right. Now, the church committee was, it was a church community with a storm shelter for tornadoes. Okay? But the media called it a compound with a bunker. Remember, Hitler had a bunker. Okay. So it was about 14 miles outside of Waco, and it was an easy space out there in the country to control the scene. They had the Branch Davidians had very different religious beliefs that would seem pretty bizarre to most church folks. And they bought and sold guns at gun shows. The Davidians knew of a small airport. Also, this is another thing that we theorize, can't prove this, that the Davidians knew of a small airport 3 to 4 miles away that was used for refueling flights from Mena, Arkansas, to Mena, Arkansas from Colombia and Panama as the DEA and the CIA was flying in cocaine and drugs. That's why H.W. Bush has the nickname Poppy. Okay, discovered six years ago was plans for, this is what I was on a radio show, one of my radio show guests I covered, was we found the Brazos County printouts for the Trans-Texas corridor to roll right over the top of it. It actually, in the southbound fast lane, literally rolled right over the top of the brand new built church that we built for them. Okay. Now, the Main Street... and we had the Brazos County maps that are now no longer available, and they tell us do not exist. Okay, fortunately we got them before they pulled that. Now, the mainstream media, remember, is controlled by 6 mega corporations. 4 of them are military industrial complex companies that I know of. Okay, so the Branch Davidians, one of the best books on the subject is Carol Moore, her book called The Davidian Massacre. She's a libertarian pacifist, and she actually went in to prove opposite of what she found. The BATF ignored local law enforcement advice, whereas it heeded that of a cult buster committed of it heeded the advice of cult busters committed to the destruction of the group. The government knows it had never had sufficient evidence of child abuse or sexual abuse to indict David Koresh, which was another thing the media kept throwing at us. Okay, David Koresh invited BATF agents to inspect his guns 6 months before the raid on February 28th. Koresh came to the front. When the first raid happened, Koresh had already invited them in. They were watching him from a house right across the street, videoing and all that kind of stuff, but they couldn't find anything on him, really, so much. Okay, so when they did the raid, Koresh came to the front door unarmed and tried to comply with the warrant, crying, "Let's talk, there's women and children in here." The ATF agents panicked after an agent shot a dog and shot first at Koresh, hitting him and mortally wounding his unarmed father-in-law who stood behind him. ATF agents and 1 or more helicopters fired down at the Davidians, killing 4 people and leaving more than 100 bullet holes in the roof walls of the Mount Carmel Center. ATF agents consistently have lied to cover up their acts, falsely claiming Davidians ambushed them with machine guns, grenades, and .50 caliber weapons. None of that was ever found. ATF and FBI agents purposely sabotaged negotiations by punishing the Davidians whenever they cooperated and continually harassing and insulting them in a cover-your-butt conspiracy. FBI agents attempted to destroy evidence of illegal gunfire that would have sent ATF agents to prison. Now, next Saturday is the 21st anniversary. FBI agents lied to Attorney General Janet Reno about Koresh's April 14th promise to surrender letter. They lied to Reno about the safety of the CS gas, about the FBI being fatigued, about the child abuse, about the rules of engagement and their plan to demolish the buildings in order to coerce Janet Reno into approving a dangerous gas and tank assault. They used tanks on a church community. 17 children. Reno's Justice Department promoted and condoned obvious judicial and prosecutorial misconduct, especially missing and withheld evidence through the 94 trial of 11 Branch Davidians. Jurors found 8 Davidians guilty of what they thought were minor charges, which would result in only time served. They'd already been in jail at least a year. However, the judge sentenced them to a total of 243 years. They were found not guilty of conspiracy to murder and all that. But the judge condemned them to 243 years. Congressional hearings demonized Davidians and ignored evidence of crimes by federal agents. Now, I'm going to run through some of the pictures so that we can remember what this is really about. 80 people died, 17 children. Now, the lady in the front of this picture lost 4 children and her husband. I know this woman. And she's the kindest, sweetest, gentlest little lady. This was just a church community of people. Maybe they had some strange beliefs according to us, but they were just a church community of people. A lot of people of color. Had a guy that they thought was a great Bible teacher. This is how they portrayed him in the media. Now at the bottom you'll see, what does it say? His name was Death, and hell followed with him, which is a scripture out of Revelation. So that's the way they portray David Koresh, so that they can cover up what happened. Okay, this is another piece that the media used to condemn, put David Koresh in the same category with Jim Jones down in Guyana. Because see the picture of the Time magazine thing there in the middle. Okay, now this is what the church looked like. I think most of us remember what happened there and remember the fire. Okay, now when the raid started, they pulled up and started shooting. They just opened fire. Okay, what happened was there was some dogs in a pen by the front door. Dog started barking, an agent shot the dog. And then Koresh opens the door and says, "Hey, what's going on?" They opened fire on him. Nobody was armed. Okay, this is where Wayne Martin is saying, we're under fire. He calls 911 and says, "We're under fire, call it off. We've got women and children in here." And then the last thing he says, "I have a right to defend myself." They started firing first. Now I think all of us remember, because the ATF agents that died there too are victims. Because the ATF didn't follow proper procedure and they didn't follow the law. They used tanks on a church community. This is just some of the pictures. I mean, I had to cut this down so much. They also, FBI got to bring out their secret electronic weapons, the listening devices, and shoot microwave weapons into the building to try and, x-ray weapons, all kinds of stuff like that they were able to use on the Davidians, that they finally got to break out and try them out. When they started the attack on April 19th, they kept announcing on a bullhorn, "This is not an assault, this is not an assault." While they're knocking down walls, while they're shooting tear gas, canisters and tear gas directly into the building, "This is not an assault. This is not an assault." So if I come over and start clobbering you with my fist and tell you it's not an assault, well, anyway, you know what I mean. So now this is one of the pictures of the first results of the tanks smashing walls. Also what they did was when they smashed and knocked down a lot of this stuff, a lot of people were on the second floor and they got trapped in the rubble. This is a picture of a sniper outside of Waco. The FLIR footage in one of the videos, you can get on YouTube. Do we have all those handouts? You can get on YouTube and you can watch several documentaries about what happened there. People who have researched the FLIR footage that's done from satellites picks up sniper positions when the fire started, as the snipers were shooting Branch Davidians as they ran out of the fire. Now this guy's taking a break while the other guy's on watch. He's taking a little nap, getting some rest there, and until it's time to go to guns. Now here's just some of the pictures as we remember the fire, just so that we can remember what happened there. Tanks, armored personnel carriers. It looks like, see, to me that reminds me of shock and awe in Iraq or something, you know, when we started bombing them. Okay. Now, another thing that they did do was these tanks shot and were loaded with CS gas, and they would knock a hole in the wall and pump CS. Okay. Oh, you can't see it? We can't see it, yeah. Do we need to
Well, that turned off the power though.
No, it didn't hear. I don't think, no. Is that okay? Is that all right with everybody? Okay. All right. Now, see the barrel on this tank, they pump CS gas. CS gas is highly flammable. But of course, they blame the Davidians for starting the fire. Okay. This is the head of the FBI task force, and I've gone blank on his name, but he wants to make sure he gets a picture with the flames in the background. This guy today still defends the FBI actions and the ATF action. 8-year-old boy. These are the remains of these children that they identified. If you look close, you can actually see her nose there and mouth. Sorry while you're reading to see such things, but this is what happened 21 years ago. This little girl was found. They had special forces units there. This girl's name was Rachel. She was 14. Didn't get to grow up, be cool, have a boyfriend, go shopping, hang out at the mall, any of that stuff. This is Clive Doyle's daughter, 13 years old. By the way, that's the dog they shot at the front door. Okay. Now, these are other remains and pictures of the people. This is the ATF funeral. They got a color guard and honored and everything for the ATF agents that died there. The Waco, and what on the property now, they've got an entire monument with a little like headstone with the names of the ATF agents, knowing that they were victims as well. 4 ATF agents died. Okay, now, months after the Branch Davidian's residence was burned to the ground, the Treasury Department conducted a review and conducted of the conduct of its subdivision, the ATF, at Waco. The opinion of firearms experts pre-printed in the Treasury Department report noted, this is the Treasury Department, none of the many pieces of information available to me is sufficient by itself to answer the question as to whether Koresh and his followers inside the compound were engaged in assembling automatic weapons in violation of the National Firearms Act. That's Louis Freeh. He was the head of the FBI. That's Janet Reno. I had to pick that picture. There is no limit of statute of limitations on murder. No one's gone to jail for the crimes that were committed there. No one's been arrested. Nothing's changed. ATF's still in operation. There's also no shortage of stupidity or ignorance. Those people are happy what the ATF did. Now, April 19th, 1995. That's the Murrah building, Oklahoma City. That's what it looked like. There's the day of the bombing. Now, take a look here and remember, I'll get to another picture here just a second and then I'll back up. Okay, that's the way they portrayed Timothy McVeigh. Same thing they did with David Koresh. I think Oswald was innocent of shooting Kennedy, and I think he was the patsy as well. Osama bin Laden, yeah. Now, the media actually put this picture up. This is what the front of the Murrah building looked like, a big hole just like this, to show the truck bomb blew up. Well, let's see. Where's the hole? I don't see it. Okay. You also, let me back it up. I mean, there should be a hole, you know, right in there. Okay. Now, 19 children died. They had a daycare that day. FBI, ATF were called, told not to come to work that day. They showed us endless pictures of these poor victims, these poor children. I can't even imagine what that would be like, picking up a little baby like that. It's hard for me to even do this without getting choked up. The rest of the rescue workers, the fire department showing up and helping these people. 168 people killed in Oklahoma City. This is a picture, hey, it's cool, it's working. This is a picture of Timothy McVeigh 15 minutes before the supposed truck bomb went off at a McDonald's. 1 hour, no, that was 45 minutes before, 40 minutes before he supposedly went and rented the Ryder truck at Elliott's and loaded it with weapons or bombs or whatever. I guess he could do all that. Now, it was raining that day and he was dry. Just an interesting piece to consider. Now, this picture was found by somebody who was investigating the Ryder truck that didn't buy the official story. Nearby, there's an army base, and they found this Ryder truck parked there. So there's a lot of people that believe it was a false flag attack. Well, I don't know if a Ryder truck was involved or not. I don't see a hole in the ground. Anyway, I'm just throwing that in as another possibility. Now, let me get... do it?
Oh, no, that just turns the light on.
Okay, now we'll get this light.
You have to get escape.
Oh yeah, it's good. Okay, this is the official news report the day of the Oklahoma City bomb. Come do it, yeah. There you go.
Because here's now what we are starting to learn about the succession, or what someone obviously hoped would be a succession of explosions. The first bomb that was in the federal building did go off. It did the damage that you see right there. The second explosive was found and diffused. The third explosive that was found, and they are working on right now as we speak, I understand, both the second and third explosives, if you can imagine this, were larger than the first. So try to imagine 2- or 3-fold happening what we've already seen there. It is just incredible to think that there was that much heavy artillery that was somehow moved into the downtown Oklahoma City Federal Building. 2 other explosive devices were found that were not detonated, and they were larger than the first. I think you said another bomb.
Oh my God, another bomb.
We just saw, if you were watching there was a white pickup truck backing a trailer into the scene here. They're trying to move people out of the way so they can get it in. Appears to be the Oklahoma County Bomb Squad. It's their bomb disposal unit, essentially, is what it is, and it is what they would use to, if the report that we gave you just a few moments ago turns out to be correct, that they have found a second explosive device of some kind inside this building, they'll back that trailer down there, and the bomb squad folks will go in, and they will use that trailer. You see the bucket on the back there, sort of, this is how they would transport the explosive device away from this populated area to try to do something with it.
The Justice Department is reporting that a second explosive device has been found in the A.P. Murrah building in downtown Oklahoma City. Mike, you're still with us, aren't you?
Yes, I am, and I might tell you in addition to that, in fact, what we were told at the scene a few minutes ago was that, in fact, 2 different explosive devices were found in addition to the one that went off.
So a total of 3.
A total of 3.
Now confirmed through federal authorities that a second bomb has been found inside that federal building in Oklahoma City. It was an explosion at 9 o'clock this morning that did that damage you're looking at right there, blowing off the entire north face of that building. Again, you're looking at the north face there. A second bomb was found on the east side of that building. A bomb squad is on the scene. That second bomb has not exploded. We don't know quite the status yet, if they've managed to defuse it, but it has been confirmed that a second bomb was found on the east side.
I have is that one device was deactivated. Apparently there's another device, and obviously whatever did the damage to the Murrah building was a tremendous, very sophisticated explosive device.
So President Clinton just called Governor Frank Keating, and he says that 3 FBI anti-terrorist teams are en route to Oklahoma City. Right now, they are saying that this is the work of a sophisticated group. This is a very sophisticated device, and it has to have been done by an explosives expert. Obviously, with this type of explosion.
The medical teams downtown are unable to get into the wreckage to retrieve more of the injured because of the presence of other bombs in the area.
I just took a look down the street at the Murrah building again. I see another bomb truck going, so apparently they're going to try to get out that third bomb that's been talked about. Still a lot of activity around the Murrah building. Security concerns that another one still might go up.
Fortunately, it didn't, because the second device that they found, we understand, was even more powerful than the first. They then found a third device, and you can see the look on this woman's face of the fear that she might have to go through the same thing again. They then found a third device, which was also larger than the first. Hard to feel lucky at this point, but certainly through some good work by some munitions experts and the explosive sniffing dogs, further tragedy has almost certainly been averted here.
But it was a great stroke of luck that we actually have got diffused bombs. It's through the bomb material that we'll be able to track down.
Interesting, huh? Get my lovely assistant here. All right, now, this is the official report of the Murrah building done by Dr. Gene Corley and these other, well, duh, you can read these people right here. They were the investigators to come up with the reason or what happened in Oklahoma City. Buildings destroyed, Murrah building. They were also uniquely part of the 9/11 ASCE team. Okay, so the buildings destroyed, Murrah building, World Trade Center buildings 1, 2, and 7. Did you know the third building came down in New York City?
American Society of Civil Engineers. You say a lot of acronyms. American Society of Civil Engineers.
Okay, thank you. And contracted to remove the rubble at Oklahoma City and World Trade Center is a company called Controlled Demolition Incorporated. Okay. Fate of the structural evidence. What happened to all the evidence at the crime scene? It's buried. They guarded it with security, fenced it off, and poured concrete over it. All the evidence at the World Trade Center was recycled. Not allowed to be examined except for the little bit that people were able to sneak out and actually have it tested for explosive devices and controlled demolition, which was proven. The cause blamed by the official reports of the majority of destruction, collapse resulting from a truck bomb. Well, I think we just saw some different evidence on that. And of course, the World Trade Center collapse resulting from plane crashes and fires. Okay, that's never happened before in history, but it happened 3 times on 9/11/01. Type of collapse alleged to explain disproportionate total collapse, progressive collapse, and progressive collapse on 9/11. Now, here's the bottom line. What legislation gets passed after all this? Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996. And of course, after the World Trade Center, we get the Patriot Act. Now, I don't even have time to cover the 1996 bombing of the World Trade Center that was done as an FBI sting. You want to look it up, look it up. I'm sorry, 93. 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. Let me get on to the next one. The best movie to watch on the issue of Oklahoma City is this movie here. You can probably watch it on YouTube, but I recommend getting online and buy one. Make copies, hand it out to people. It's important that we keep an eye on this. Now, this is your members of Congress. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the World Wrestling Federation. Now, the Democrats and the Republicans have some issues and some differences, but when it really comes to the bottom line, it's theater. It's acting. Doesn't matter if it's Ted Cruz or Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama or George Bush. It's theater. Now, let me just real quick to the Boston bombing, because what we're told about that is not true either. This is a picture taken. There's a whole bunch of these guys. That is Blackwater. That's a private contractor that creates terrorism. Blowing stuff up, then they get more money to protect us. Now, the number one way to avoid being killed in a terrorist attack, if you hear about a government running any drills near where you are, get out of town. Now, Sandy Hook might be another one you really want to take a look at, because they're really coming after gun control on that one. There's no surveillance video, no tears. This guy here, oops. There we go. This guy here was supposed to be one of the fathers of one of the girls that allegedly got killed in Sandy Hook. Now, he didn't know the cameras were on. He was joking around and kind of goofing off and all that and smiling and everything. Then he realized the cameras were on, and he got all sad and choked up. And so I'm saying that needs to be looked into. All right. Right now, this is why I'm saying it's going to happen again. This is an issue happening in Bunkerville, Nevada. Everybody know about this? Here's the rancher. There's a rancher out there. Okay, now he's since 1877, his family's been there. He's got 14 children, like 54 grandkids. They've been in this area since 1877. He's like 6th generation or something out here in this little area. It's just northeast of Las Vegas. Bureau of Land Management. I'll call them BLM, not BM. Anyway, they just declare these areas a, what is it? It's a, environmentally protection, all for our good and all that. And so the federal government takes control of it, takes it away from the states. This is a map of, in Nevada, in Nevada, they have, the federal government's taking control of 82.9% of the land. This is called, the root of this is a thing called Agenda 21. It's a UN program. If anybody runs out of toilet paper in here, I've got some for you. Okay, so now what's going on there? Let me go back. What's going on is they're taking over more and more land. The goal of Agenda 21 is to herd us all into mass cities and not be able to be free and live on the land. And for us Americans who think we're free, do you own your house? If you pay it off, do you own your house? Nope, you don't. Because if you don't pay your property tax, they will come with guns and take it from you. Same thing with your car, your registration and your inspection sticker. We don't own anything. Okay. Now, we can stop this if this is the official United Nations Agenda 21. This is what it looks like, where we're at the bottom and it's corporations and banks and anyway, going all the way up. It's for domination and control, and then control all the wealth and resources. The red areas, according to Agenda 21, this is their goal, is the red areas where we won't be allowed, us in this room, because we're not part of them. We're not part of the elite. Now the little areas, it's not really a clear picture, but you can look this up and get the information on Agenda 21. We got to look at this. This is Cliven Bundy. He's the rancher who stood up to the BLM. They ran out 52 other, 2 of them died of old age, but 50 other ranchers have been run out of business, cattle ranchers, by the BLM because they took over 660,000 acres, declaring it a habitat for the endangered desert tortoise. Okay, now horses and cattle have run free, and it's because the BLM removed those cattle and horses that the tortoise numbers started to decline, because all that stuff works together. Now, he's just an old man, just said, I've had enough. I'm not giving up. I'm fighting them. People from all over the country started showing up. People from Utah, Arizona, the state of Arizona, the legislature met in emergency session and sent representatives to there to stand with this guy. Awesome. That's awesome. And so at first, I mean, they were running around. They had all these agents all over the place. They were tasering people, knocking people to the ground. A pregnant woman, they knocked her to the ground. Another lady with cancer, they pinned her to the ground, shot her with tasers, so on and so forth. They sick dogs on people just to intimidate, because they're the authorities, you see. Now, they also had sniper positions set up, just like they did at Waco. I don't know if Lon Horiuchi was there or not. He's the guy that shot Randy Weaver's wife, if you remember that. Vicky Weaver. Yeah, he shot Vicky Weaver, Randy Weaver's wife. I've met Randy Weaver. Nice guy. Anyway, so these cattle are just running free on this desert land, and but it turns out they did some research. They made it a no-fly zone. But the research points to the fact that military-industrial complex companies want that for fracking, drilling. They want to mine the land and be able to have everybody run off so that they can do with that land what they want, so that they can get military grade minerals and so on. So it gets a lot deeper when you really look into it. Now the good news, and this is the First Amendment. See, this is what they do. You don't have free speech unless you get into this area. I've been in 2 of these personally. When I protested McKee in Georgetown, Texas, who was the head of the 9/11 Commission report, and I stood there with a great big 9/11 as an inside job sign, and all the goons coming over, and boy, they wanted to hurt me. They wanted me to act up. Okay, so anyway, this is the First Amendment area, and he said, I'm not doing it. This is a call out to, now, what's happened since then, today, the latest is, he's blowing the shofar, if anybody knows what a shofar is. It's called a battle. People have had enough of the government overrunning and stepping there and stomping on people and murdering people. We're not going to let another Waco happen. So, the BLM backed down. That's Cliven Bundy right there. And all these guys came from all over the country. They came from Utah, Arizona, Nevada, Texas, New Mexico, and I think even some of them came from like Michigan and Minnesota to stand with this guy against this illegal federal land grab. All right, now here they are facing off, and they're going to they're mounted up on horses here. The BLM came on his land and took his cattle. They're going back to get it. Oops, wrong one. Now, here's the good news. Here's what we can do. This is about 8 minutes, and then I'll be done.
Once upon a time, there were 100 million people. They had different interests, different beliefs, different occupations, but for the most part, they got along pretty well. Then one day, a gang of a few hundred people showed up. Need to zoom in some more to see them. I know they're there somewhere. Zoom in. There they are. And this gang of a few hundred said to the throng of 100 million, "From now on, you all have to give us a cut of everything you earn."
This is an accurate graphical comparison between the number of American taxpayers and the number of U.S. congressmen.
And the throng said, "Gosh, do we have to give you a cut of what we earn?" And the gang of a few hundred said, "Yes, you have to." And the throng said, "Well, okay, I guess we have to." And one little troublemaker asked, "What if we don't?" The gang of a few hundred didn't like this and said, "If you do not comply, we shall unleash upon you our legions of enforcers." And the throng cried, "Oh no, please don't. We will comply, we will pay."
This is an accurate graphical comparison between the number of American taxpayers and the total number of IRS employees.
Time went by and the gang of a few hundred said, "Now we want more of what you earn." And this kept happening over and over again until eventually some of the throng were paying almost half of what they earned to the gang. Whenever the gang demanded more, the throng would say, "Golly, we're already having a tough time. Do we really need to give you even more?" And the gang always said, "Yes, you must, or we shall unleash our legion of enforcers." Now the gang of a few hundred was getting trillions of dollars every year, spending it on wars and pyramid schemes, giving away goodies to their friends, buying influence, and doing lots of other things. And some of the throng started saying, "We don't really like the war you're waging with the money we give you. Do we really have to be paying for that?" And the gang said, "Yes, we demand it. Don't make us send out our legion of enforcers." And some of the throng said, "You're taking our money and giving it to huge corporations and giant banks, and some people who just don't want to work. A lot of these things we don't like." And the gang said, "We don't care. We will decide how to spend it. You just do as you're told, or else." And the throng said, "Okay, I guess we have to." But eventually the throng got so fed up, so angry, that they took a drastic step. One day they said to the gang, "We don't like what you're doing. We want a new gang." And after pouring a huge amount of time and money into the effort, they replaced the gang with a new gang. Then the throng pleaded with the new gang, "Now, at long last, can we keep our own money, or at least keep more of it?" And the new gang said, "Sorry, but after much discussion, we've decided that you can't. You have to keep giving us what you've been giving, in fact, a little bit more than before." The throng was distraught and said, "This is dreadful. But after all, what choice do we have? I mean, they say we must comply, and they have that scary legion of enforcers. We're powerless against them. We'd better just do as we're told." So they did as they were told, got poorer and poorer, and lived miserably ever after. But after all, what else could they have done? What power could this throng possibly have compared to this gang of a few hundred and their enforcers? What chance would this thing have against this thing? How could these 100 million people ever hope to successfully resist the awesome power of this tiny little dot? In case anyone missed this, let's review. Here's them, here are their enforcers, here's us. Them, us. Them, us. Does anything about this seem just a little strange to you? Are you perhaps wondering, why does the throng need the permission of the dot to do anything. Why do these people feel the need to ask this tiny little dot if they can keep more of what they earn? Why would they spend year after year literally begging for lower taxes from this little dot? Is this dot just really darn intimidating? Is it very persuasive in its reasoning? To be blunt, why would this throng give a rodent's backside what this tiny little dot wanted? The fact that this tiny dot has the gall to issue such demands to such a throng is pretty startling in and of itself. But what is far more amazing is that the throng obeys this minuscule little parasitic gang of control freaks. What could possibly explain this? Let's ask the dot. This is how it works. When we, the dot, take your money and spend it on things you don't like, we're representing you. In fact, though you're not allowed to actually keep your own money, you're allowed to decide which little dot will steal half of what you earn. So that really means that you're in charge and that you're agreeing to give us your money. In fact, we, the dot, are serving you when we take your money and spend it on things you don't like. And so you should thank us and treat us with great respect and honor for having robbed you on your behalf for your own good in order to serve you by doing things you don't want us to do. So there you have it. I hope that cleared everything up for you.
If you're not entirely satisfied with the dot's explanation of things, you really should read the book, The Most Dangerous Superstition, available now at Amazon.com.
Okay, my effort here is not only to remind everybody of Waco, remind everybody of Oklahoma City, of the different things that have happened, including 9/11, back to the 93 bombing that I didn't even get to cover. I didn't even think I could get through all these slides this fast. So, the answer is when people come together. When we stand as Americans and not as Republicans or Democrats, or we stand together as Americans against tyranny, against evil, and expose the darkness when we see it. I've actually gotten to know the surviving Branch Davidians, and they're wonderful, kind, gentle people. They don't have any hatred and animosity and vengeance in them. We've got handouts here, and on there is is a reminder of where the memorial will be from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. We can go ahead and turn that off if you want. Yeah. I'm at that. Where the memorial is going to be in Waco, the 21st anniversary. I've gone every year. I think I've missed once, maybe twice. And 2 years ago, more evidence came out from a professor at Tulane, I believe, where she had gotten all the documented transcripts of the FBI communication and how they lied to the Branch Davidians over and over and over again, just playing mind games with them. So the point is that we stand with people that have been victimized. Clyde Doyle was lucky he got out alive. A lot of these other people were just, just lucky. He spent a year in jail and wasn't even charged with anything. Or you can remember Oklahoma City. Take a trip on that Saturday and go up to Oklahoma City and for the memorial at Oklahoma City. When the conversation comes up, if you'll do your homework and research and find out what really happened in these places, read the books, watch the documentary films, pray about it, think about it, investigate for yourself. Don't believe me, but certainly don't believe what the government tells you. Research for yourself. That way when the conversation comes up at whatever event you're at, you can calmly correct the situation and say, no, they didn't get what they deserved. They were murdered. And there is no statute of limitations. But then we just had the 50th anniversary of JFK assassination, and there was only about a couple hundred people showed up for that. So if we'll get off our butts and do what we're supposed to do and stand with each other and stand with this rancher, stand to never let another Waco happen. Quit being Democrats, quit being Republicans, quit being Libertarians or Green Party or whatever, and be Americans and stand for the Constitution and truth. So, thank you. That's it. Thank you. Okay.
So what didn't you cover, Stu?
Oh, man.
No, I mean specifics. Did you talk about Sarah Bain?
Well, I didn't document on here the FLIR footage, how the snipers were shooting the Branch Davidians as they came out of the building. I have to just mention it. And there's a massive amount of evidence on that.
Video evidence of that, yeah.
Right. I didn't document all the other pictures that I had of the burned up Branch Davidians. It was hard. I was getting choked up on all this as I was preparing for this. But
did you mention that the evidence, the forensic evidence, they had the bodies all stored in a refrigeration trailer, and they let the trailer AC go off, and all the evidence was destroyed?
Right. Right. After the event they burned to the ground. Another thing, two things I didn't cover that brings up another thing. One was that what he just said is they had all the bodies of the dead Davidians in a big semi-trailer truck, refrigerator semi-trailer truck. The Davidians were calling for autopsies. They were saying that they knew that a lot of these people were shot in the head. And see, that kind of came out in the testimony of the FBI ATF saying that the Davidians were killing themselves. But actually there were special forces units there that were going in. That's why that one picture of the little black girl, and they only found her feet. It was cut off. Her legs were cut off. Okay, so that when the Davidians were asking for autopsies of the survivors, somehow the power got cut off to that semi-trailer truck, and it sat there in the Texas heat for weeks. So the bodies decayed so that there wouldn't be any autopsy allowed. Another thing was, what was that other one? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and who manned Sniper Team Blue?
Do what?
Who was at position Sniper Team Blue?
I don't know.
Is the name Lon Horiuchi?
Oh, Lon Horiuchi, right. Yeah, I mentioned that.
Explain about him.
Sniper Team Blue, that's right. Lon Horiuchi was the guy who shot Vicki Weaver. Do y'all remember any of that? Randy Weaver in Idaho? Yeah, he was a white supremacist or whatever, and they surrounded him, killed his son, killed his wife, while she was sitting in her chair nursing her baby.
Going to Oklahoma City, who was in charge of the investigation, federal investigation, to what happened in Oklahoma City and gave us the official report?
I don't remember.
Eric Holder?
Oh, that's right, Eric Holder, that's right. See, there's so much stuff in here you can't even remember it all. How about that, Eric Holder?
So the Branch Davidians were charged with crimes.
Right.
How many opportunities, what other ways could they have addressed those crimes? What were the charges, and how could they have addressed those crimes without bringing in tanks? What were they charged with?
The Branch Davidians?
Yes.
Okay, the Davidians were charged with, the ATF did a lot of homework research supposedly to state that the Davidians had illegal weapons. Go ahead.
Did they show up with a warrant?
They did not show up with a warrant. And then in congressional testimony, it came out that if they had a warrant, it was on the helicopter.
I was watching all of that, and they kept saying about the what David Koresh did and all these atrocities he did to the children and things like that. And then I have understood from you, when you talked to some of the people that came out of there, that most of that was just a bald-faced lie.
About
the children, how he abused the children.
Oh, right.
And is it not also true that if they wanted him, they could have gotten him outside at any time, weeks before?
Right. And I think the bottom line is if David Koresh was guilty of any of this stuff, go arrest the guy. You don't need 40 ATF agents to just open fire on a church community. The previous sheriff that was in Brazos County used to call him if there was ever a complaint or a concern. He would call Koresh on the phone. David would drive right down to his office. Or he'd go jogging in the morning. There was 19 ways they could have just arrested him and gone in and served a warrant. And investigated if they were doing anything illegal. But that's not what they needed to do. They needed to put on a showtime. So that's what that was about. And then they botched the whole thing, and it got out of control. And the FBI also, talking about the bodies that were stored, also destroyed evidence. They wiped the whole crime scene clean. They took off like 4 inches of dirt, and they poured bleach everywhere. And
18.
Huh?
They said 18 inches officially.
18, that's right, you're right. 18 inches of dirt. And then we were rebuilding the church, trying to just build them a little church that they could go, for the survivors. We found, we would fill up number 10 coffee cans with rounds and shrapnel and spent rounds and all that kind of. We found we filled up can after can after can. And this is after the cleanup. Now, the previous sheriff in Brazos County used to go out there and go fishing, and he used to go shooting out there with the Davidians. Koresh knew he was being watched. There was a house two houses right across the street. One of them's been bulldozed since then. That happened to be the house that the ATF was watching him in. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but and he would go over, because Koresh was all about his version of the gospel. So he would go across the street, knock on the door, and say, "Come on, fellas, come on over." And they'd bring them pizza and a 12-pack of Coke. And they just crack open the door. The ATF guys, "Well, no, we're not coming out," and all that stuff. So he knew he was being watched. So that's why when the ATF showed up, he just walked to the door and was like, "What? What? What do they want?" Does anybody here not know how Koresh knew they were coming?
Do you want to explain?
Okay. I'll do some explaining. Okay. Koresh knew he was being watched. He'd gone over and asked them to come on over anytime they wanted, because they didn't have anything illegal, and that's what Carol Moore's book and all the documentation shows, that they didn't have anything illegal. But Koresh was, everybody was getting ready for their day of work. All these different people that lived there had different jobs. They worked at Walmart, they were car repairmen, car mechanics, or paint houses, or worked at a convenience store somewhere or something. Everybody had a job and was getting ready for their day or already off at work. One of the guys was a mail delivery guy, and he was driving in the area, saw a lot of these ATF guys set up their staging position, and they had cameras there and media. He drove by and he said, "Hey fellas, what's going on?" And the camera guy evidently told him, we got this raid over here for these crazy people, this cult going on over here. And he said, "Oh, okay, all right, y'all be careful out there." So he calls Koresh and lets him know. Koresh's response was, "What do they want?" Okay, so the FBI the ATF had the phones tapped, so they knew that they were coming. So that's why they were amped up and expecting to be ambushed, because that's what they told the victims of the ATF. The ATF are victims too. I don't cut them any slack necessarily, but that's how come everything got amped up, and they came rolling in with those cattle cars, and they unloaded 40 guys, and they just opened up. So.
I think Clive Doyle made the comment to one of the agents, actually the agent, I'm trying to remember his name, who, it was his cattle trailer that most of the agents came in on. And Clive was saying, if we were attempting to ambush you, you never would have left that cattle trailer alive.
Right.
I mean, that's really stupid to go in there all packed like sardines in the back of a cattle trailer. I mean, it didn't make any sense.
Yeah, a couple of automatic weapons would have taken out that whole thing. Now, it's sad that 4 agents died, but they didn't serve a warrant. They just pulled up and opened fire. And again, if Koresh was guilty of any things they said they was, serve a warrant, arrest the guy. Anyway, so.
Anybody else? Was any high official at the ADF ever asked to respond to the questions about the Branch Division attack?
Yeah, there's quite a few of them that I'm aware of that have responded, and they have great regret. Some of them don't. The one picture of the FBI guy getting a picture, make sure he gets a picture in front of the flames, doesn't regret it. Yeah, Byron Sage. He still defends it to today. But a lot of ATF agents have a lot of guilt and knowing that the whole thing, what really happened. And so that's what I understand, and I've read several comments by some of the ATF agents that have great regret.
Yeah, why was there no congressional investigation of this thing? Because, I remember I was here when all this happened. And yeah. So was it a complete whitewash? I mean,
yeah, was that a whitewash? Yeah. Sonny Bono was a congressman at the time, and when he started hearing the testimony, the way the children were killed, he broke down and started crying. And but yeah, I mean, they covered it up and basically came up with the solution that, well, we put microphones on the inside of the building, and we heard the Branch Davidians say, start it, light it. But of course, we don't know if that's true. Of course they didn't. They didn't kill themselves. They were trying to live. But they put that out, so then the congressional answer was that the Davidians killed themselves and shot each other and started the fire. Even though, they pumped in all this CS gas, just thousands of pounds of CS gas and all that, so.
Is that CS gas used in wartime?
It was, the CS gas they used was,
is that Geneva Convention banned gas?
Yes, the Geneva Convention banned gas even in wartime.
That particular gas is banned in wartime, correct?
Yes, but not according to what the ATF says. I mean, they've broken so many laws, it's crazy. But what John's saying is that gas was banned, but they used it anyway. So. When we were building the church, one last thing, when we were building the church, it took 7 months to do it. They honored the Saturday Sabbath, and so we could only work on Sundays, and then I'd go down sometimes if I had a slow day from Austin. I lived in Austin. I'd drive up there if I had a Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday slow or whatever. I'd load up all my tools, drive out there and frame up some stuff or whatever. So I remember going around to the different churches. When you drive there, you pass 5 churches. And I pulled up at these different churches asking, and letting them know what we're doing. They didn't want anything to do with me. They couldn't wait for me to leave. And, which is sad.
How many people there from the community of Waco actually, over the years, did you see at the memorial services?
I don't know.
Very few.
Very few.
Very few. Very, very strange, the kind of mind warp of the community there.
Right. In Dallas, you know, with the 50th anniversary of JFK, how many people from Dallas showed up? Back and to the left. Back and to the left. Okay. Anyway.
You said what really happened in Waco, why will it happen again? That was part of your title. I was wondering, why will it happen again? It was
Because, number one, because we allow it. We haven't called, the people that do these crimes in government, there's no accountability. If there's no accountability, they're going to do it again. Doesn't matter if they're Democrat or Republican. Doesn't matter who it is. Doesn't matter who's in charge. There's no accountability, so they're going to do it again. Right.
We also have a media that will play along and cover it up and not ask questions and repeat whatever they're told.
Okay, let me bring up something about the media thing real quick. Yeah, he's got a question.
I'm trying to pretend I have a microphone. Very easy to understand.
Do you think it was a coincidence that it was Democrats in power this time and at Waco?
Yes, no. I don't think it really. Well, the thing was the thing was.
I didn't hear you.
Okay, the thing was planned during H.W. Bush's tenure.
I see.
So Clinton had just gone in. Janet Reno, I mean, she was just, you know, I mean, she didn't know anything.
I understand that you're saying that there's really no fundamental difference between Republicans and Democrats. My question is, do you feel the same way about liberals and conservatives?
Depends on what you mean. I'm probably a liberal. I'm a libertarian for sure. Live and let live. I'm not for the police state. I'm not for all these checkpoints and cops swarming around looking for somebody to pull over and make some money off of. So there are differences between conservatives and Republicans, but they don't run anything. Really, I mean, when it really comes down to it, it's like the Republicans and the Democrats have a poker game. And you can point out something, but if you threaten their game, they unify. Right? So, because it's all about the money and the power. And the Federal Reserve's who really runs the country. Obama's a puppet. Bush was a puppet. Clinton was a puppet. How the media controls the way we think about this. Clinton was president his first term. His second term is coming up for him to run for election. He and Al Gore have coffees in the White House with Chinese dignitaries. They give campaign donations to Clinton Gore campaign for the re-election, and Clinton gives them missile technology secrets. Treason twice. The next week, okay, so that hits the news, but the next week what comes out? Monica Lewinsky. Stained dress, cigars, all that nonsense that we had to hear for 9 months straight. That's what the pastors want to talk about. That's what the Republicans want to talk about. He lied before Congress. He had sex with that woman when he committed treason. Okay. Bush lies us. They steal 2 elections, right? Didn't they steal 2 elections? And then he lies us into 2 wars, and the Democrats don't do anything. I mean, didn't they recount the votes the first time and Gore actually won? Why didn't the Democrats move for impeachment? I kept asking them that. No. So, you know, so I'm just saying, not to bash people in the head, but we got to wake up. This is why it's going to happen again if we don't wake up and we don't start taking action. Yes, sir.
So are we becoming a fascist state? So are we becoming a fascist state?
No, sir. We already are.
All right, we are. Okay.
That's who runs the country. And that, what was it? The Congress just passed a law that they're exempt from insider trading. What? But you and I do it. Fascism is when governments and corporate...
When government and industry and banking, is just like under Hitler's time in the 1930s. He got control of the banks and manufacturing, and they functioned as a unit.
Right.
And from there on, everyone was second class.
And here's another interesting thing about...
Do I have an opinion? Well, I'm taking a neutral stand here. I want to hear the commentary from the speaker.
Yes, we already are a fascist country.
I agree.
There's election fraud everywhere. We've got 6 or 7. In Austin, when I was down there, we caught election fraud 7 times, 7 times. Red-handed. We had people that were diving in dumpsters, pulling the things out and recounting the votes, and vote fraud everywhere because the corporations control it. And the second Bush election, John Kerry versus George W. Bush, right? Okay. They were in Skull and Bones together. They're actually related. Okay, so they have this fake argument and fight and everything. The fix was already in. And then they have the election. The man who ran 2/3 of the voting machines in Ohio made a promise to the Republican Party to bring in Ohio for the Republicans. What? And so Bush wins, supposedly. But it was vote fraud, and then we listen to these secretaries of state, like Clinton, Hillary Clinton or whatever, saying that the election in Tasmania or someplace was a fraud. And I'm like, what? Or Tajikistan or whatever, talking about their committing vote fraud. What was it? What? It's like John Kerry as Secretary of State condemning Russia for invading a country, a sovereign country. What? Anybody catch that? Okay, anyway.
So when was there a ceasefire during the initial BATF raid?
When they ran out of ammo.
When who ran out of ammo?
The ATF ran out of ammo. They called for a ceasefire.
And did the Davidians comply? The Davidians let them have ceasefire, right?
Yeah, they let them have ceasefire, yeah.
Okay, they let them come and take their injured?
Yes. And one of the guys that was going up the ladder, his gun went off and he shot himself in the leg. He came back down the ladder and he was helped, and nobody opened up on him from the Branch Davidian side. They were safe. If that was a guy you want to take out, that's what you would want to do in battles: wound a guy, make another guy come get him, pow, 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 pow. Right? That's what they did in Vietnam.
Did you meet David Thibodeau?
Yes.
Can you talk about David Thibodeau?
Not really. I don't know him that well. Clive and Olivia and the other ones are the ones I know the best. And Clive's the one I know the best. So I really couldn't say that much about Thibodeau. But if you know something about him.
Well, Thibodeau was giving an account as being an insider inside of Mount Carmel when the attack happened, of what happened in the upper room there where the agents died. Did you ever hear him talk about that?
Yeah, kind of, but I don't really remember it.
It was something to just give it short. One of the Davidians went up the stairs. He had a rifle in his left hand. He opened the door with his right hand. He held his right hand up and he said, "Don't shoot, there's women and children here." And a BATF agent shot him right through the palm of the hand.
Right.
Is this correct?
Okay, I remember that. That's right. Yeah.
Do you remember what his name was? I don't.
No.
It wasn't Jimmy Riddle?
I don't remember.
I'm not sure.
I don't remember.
Anyway, he then closed the door and then fired through the door at the agents.
Right.
In self-defense after he'd already been shot.
Okay, what John's talking about is when they came up the ladder on the roof and came in that window, that guy had a AR or M16 or whatever in his left hand, and he held up his right hand, said, "Stop, there's women and children here," and they shot him through the hand. So he slams the door, steps back, and opens up. Now, should the Davidians have fought back?
What is the fundamental right on that?
They didn't serve a warrant and they were under attack. I would think they have a right to defend themselves.
Against what?
Against force.
Deadly force?
Deadly force. Sure. And I don't want anybody killed. Okay.
That's it.
Oh yeah, and don't forget the 12th, the memorial. There's the information's on here. I've got a bunch of websites and stuff like that where you can do your own homework and your own research. Like I said, don't just believe me. Do your own homework and research. And I appreciate you listening to me.
Okay, now it's your turn to talk. So who wants to be first? There has to be a first. Okay, come on up here. You're first. You got 5 minutes.
5 minutes is really difficult talking about this subject, I'll tell you that. I'm just going to recount a couple of instances. I was in a meeting of Citizens for Legal Reform over at Golden Corral on Forest near Webb Chapel, and Harmon Taylor was speaking. Harmon Taylor was an attorney who had put in an order to stay the execution of Timothy McVeigh because Timothy McVeigh was a material witness in some ongoing cases of the victims of the Oklahoma City bombing. Totally reasonable. No reason that there's any rush to get rid of a material witness unless, gee. So there just happened to have been some news, and so at one point I got up and I mentioned, well, there was some new evidence in on the Waco massacre, evidence of the BATF foul play, bad conduct, and it's kind of strange. There was a guy in the room. I was trying to identify him. He looked kind of familiar, and he literally growled like some kind of wounded animal and ran out of the room. It was Richard Rogers. He no longer was employed. Dick Rogers is no longer employed, so he didn't have the cover of being a government agent anymore. He wanted to do me some bodily harm, but that wouldn't have gone well for him. The only other time I've heard someone howl like a wild animal is when I spoke to the nurse secretary of Dr. Robert Gallo and confronted her on some issues with AIDS and his involvement in its inception. Then there was a really other strange incident. Talk about synchronicity. I'm driving on I-35 southbound, and this car had been forced off the road, a brand new Mercedes. This man is there with his Oriental wife or girlfriend. I guess she was a girlfriend. She had 2 young children. I thought they were his, but maybe not. I'm not sure. But it was kind of strange. He was just really nonplussed by the whole deal. He had skidded to a stop on dry grass, and his Mercedes caught fire. So everybody piled out of the car. I stopped because there's a burning car and there's people out in the median there. Turns out one of the boys started going around the front of the car. I physically went and I got him, herded him away from there. Just at that point, the engine exploded and a piston landed just where the child had been. The next time I saw that gentleman was when he was testifying at one of the Davidian memorial services, and his name was Ferris Rookstool. Ferris Rookstool was the last negotiator who spoke to the Davidians before, as he put it, the tactical option was employed. Not only that, is he was part of the forensics team that cleaned up after the horrific thing that happened there. Ferris Rookstool had a come to Jesus moment there on the road. He could have lost a child. And later on he came clean about how dirty the whole thing was there. That the hostage rescue team and the people going in, when he talked about the tactical option, they were going in there to murder people. They were not going in there to retrieve hostages. Thank you.
Okay, who's next? There has to be a next. Come on up here.
Do I look more intelligent now?
Yeah.
Well, enough of that. So we got the 1-2 punch. Last week we had some of this stuff, and we have to try to come up with some kind of context. What do we do with all this kind of info? Do we really want to challenge our own government? We've just come through a decade where there's kind of a lot of super patriotic red, white, and blue stuff. Some people came on early that realized something's really funny about this, and now a lot of people are realizing something's really weird. But why do we have to challenge the government, like our government? Doesn't this happen everywhere, all over the world? Yes, it does. But there is something special about this country that we have to kind of stand up and fight, and voting is not going to do it. So part of the process of our possible salvation on a material level would be a step-by-step process. Part of this you have to realize, and I'm in full agreement, as you know, that being in the sway of the Republicans or the Democrats is part of the game that keeps us in a position where these things can happen. These are big issues. There's wars, there's murders, there's blackmail, there's all kinds of threatening of people that have real information. And this is really more important than, if gay people are allowed to be married, or just the things that endlessly fill up the news media. So the news media is corrupt, and we saw a little bit of that on the clip. Stuart, didn't I recommend that clip in plain sight? Yeah. So you remember the one mainstream news outlet after the other showed that there were 3 bombs, one stronger than the other. And if you look into Oklahoma City, which I ended up doing after I learned about 911, although chronologically it's the other way around, Oklahoma City is a clear case of a false flag. Absolutely. Now, that's pretty convincing right there, those 3 things. The agents are saying on mainstream media, we have the bomb. And we're so lucky because now we can analyze the bomb and find out who did it. You don't hear about that in the official story. So what you're hearing is controlled media, like we were raised to hate in communist Russia. We were raised to hate in Mao Zedong's, Red Revolution, and in Nazism. We have it. We have it. Why is it so important that we wake up as people? And how come things are so bad and so corrupt and we're normal? It's kind of this conundrum. The reason we're not out in the streets, we're not really drawing the line, we don't really feel threatened. Oh, they blew up 3,000 of our brothers and sisters in New York City. So what? Oh, they raked off 18 inches of the evidence at Waco. Well, you might not have known that, but a lot of people know that they did the same thing at the Pentagon. They say a plane hit the Pentagon, but the Pentagon lawn was pristine. So they just raked it off and put in new dirt over the Pentagon lawn. Anyway, I don't want to get into more theories, more facts. We've had plenty of experts here, but it's important. Paul Craig Roberts, who was part of the Reagan administration, wrote a recent article, and he's talking about how we get away with this. It was pretty interesting. The reason we can still have a modicum of normality that takes this further and further and lets them become richer and richer in their corrupt schemes and murderous schemes is because we have something called the reserve currency in the world, which means that all the oil, international trade is done in dollars. Now the trick here, which he explained, he was Secretary of the Treasury for Reagan, he knows what he's talking about, is that anytime they want to do anything, they just print more dollars. So they don't have to like really have any productivity behind it, any real goal, nothing. They just print some more dollars and they do it. So this can't go on forever. This comfortable state we're in is really truly threatened by these corrupt, murderous acts. Our spiritual integrity is threatened by it. Our status as the light of the world, as a nation, is threatened by this stuff. So don't take it lightly, please. Then there was one last thing, the big picture deal with the Larkin Rose. That was the dots, the little dots, and us being cowed down. It's really a picture of lions and zebras, or wolves and sheep. It's the same thing. I know that Larkin Rose a little bit. He's a philosopher that says all governments evolve into corrupt and government needs to be just as small as possible. Not at all is what he thinks. I don't know how that's going to work. But we have to find a way besides voting, because the media and this is going to sound like conspiracy theory. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm entertaining ideas that they have become very sophisticated in controlling our minds with regular TV programming, movies, news stories, and now with internet rivalry. Like mostly what you see on the internet about politics is extreme left, extreme right, and then you go out and you see the people that are much more reasonable, but they've gotten to the point now where they will do stupid things in defense of some ideal that's not real. So we have to become more media savvy, turn off your TVs or look at them with a very leery eye, a jaundiced eye, and this is a time that's coming that we have to show bravery, not by taking orders and shooting little people and going around with medals, but by standing up against that. Thank you.
Okay, who's next? All right, come on up here. Pat O'Connell.
I don't need 5 minutes, but I wanted to say something that I observed in the, I've been following the story along with Stuart about the crisis in Nevada with the Bundy ranchers. And I'm one who doesn't like to dwell on the darkness, and I'm always encouraging all of my friends to think about, put your energies into the positive. What do you want the world to look like? We can manifest the desired world by putting our positive energies out there. So I happened to look at some of the videos that he sent me on the protesters who showed up in defense of the Bundy ranchers. And what I noticed was that the ranchers or the protesters were very respectful. They got pushed down, they were tasered, those kinds of things, but they remained respectful. And the other thing that I noticed was that the agents with their dogs and the tasers, one minute they were being very macho and aggressive and angry, and the next minute they were kind of walking around like why am I here? And at the end of the video clip, you kind of see these guys taking their dogs, and what I perceived happening there was that the message is coming through to them, that they're starting to think, what if this was my family? What am I doing here? I'm here to protect Americans, not turtles. Why am I tasing my fellow Americans? What if this were my property and my family and they were out here and this was happening to them? And I think the gears are starting to turn, and I think the light is starting to prevail. And I think if we just keep encouraging people, we're visualizing that these agents of the evil people will stop complying with their orders. And if that happens, they start questioning it, and they'll go back to their barracks or their headquarters, or they'll be out having beers with their buddies and say, I didn't sign up for this. I'm not going to do this anymore. And that's what I would like to visualize happening. And then there can be all kinds of evil out there, but if they don't have anybody to take action to implement their orders, then, you know, it can't happen. Yes.
Don't you think, I'm going to take an opposing view for a moment, rather than these agents all of a sudden realizing that there should be protecting people, not turtles, don't you think there's some sergeant or officer in charge and say, okay, knock off the aggression now, let's look good?
You would think that that would happen. What I perceived happening in the video clip that I saw was individuals who started thinking about all of these folks with their phones and their cameras and thinking, I'm going to be on the internet. I'm going to be all over the news. Do I want to be seen doing something this stupid, this inane? And so I saw it happening at an individual level. I'm not sure I saw any of that happening, you know, at the superior level. But that would be a nice thing to visualize. That's all I had to say.
Because of what?
They are standing up against Russian, Libya, and so forth. There are generals being purged. Isn't that, John, how many generals have been purged in the last year?
It's hard to know the number of generals. Over 200 top officers, people in control of the nuclear arsenal, very key people. They're all getting replaced.
Well, Stuart, you paint a very, very dark, disturbing picture of your country. It really is. As an outsider, I've been here 46 years, and I still kind of an outsider because I was 30 when I came. I was 30 when I came, so you know I'm basically a European. We lived through fascism. I mean, you know, I was born in the late 30s, so you know the problem in the 30s was the dreadful danger of fascism and communism. I mean, those are the big issues. Now, what we're facing now, I think, where we've gone with globalization, is we have cartels, and that, you know, you can see it. Anyone with half a brain can see it. Now, one of the facets of America that we see is America will always resort to violence right away, at every level. I mean, they seem to love killing things. You know, they won't sit down and actually negotiate. I mean, they just say, well, let's go out. We're macho, you know, with our guns, and we're gonna, you know, violence will solve everything. Well, of course, it never solves anything. You know, it really doesn't. Now, another thing I think I've mentioned before, I always talk to my friends about, well, in 1776 you made a dreadful mistake. You know, you wrote this Constitution, but look at it, it's 3 areas are completely ridiculous, but never mind. But the first thing you should ever have done, if you're going to have a Constitution, is the first article should say, there is a crime against democracy. And what it says is that we the people
elect people to represent us. Now, if you do anything to cheat on us or anything else, that's a crime against democracy. And you get the most heinous punishment. And you force that. And you make everyone who's elected, I don't care if they're dog catcher, senator, president, you make them swear. I swear to support the people of the United States, not the cartels, not anybody else. No, but I also swear that if I violate that trust, which is a sacred trust, I know the punishment. It's going to be dire. And you enforce it. You enforce it.
Okay, who's next? Come on up here.
One of the aspects about Mount Carmel in Waco, and this is why it really is a bipartisan issue, is that was a hate crime as well as being a mass murder. The Davidians, David Koresh was colorblind. Literally a third of the people there were black, racially black. There were Hawaiians, there were Indians there, American Indians, Polynesians. I'm trying to remember all the different Hispanic. It was one of the most diverse. Pardon? Filipino. Yeah, some of the most diverse crowd you can imagine, and they exceeded the population in the amount of degrees in education, higher education, as a group. That's a very intelligent group. And this is one thing, you know, my view of Koresh is I see him as a manipulator. It's much easier to manipulate very intelligent people than it is good old country boys with horse sense. So don't be surprised that you know, people with a lot of degrees and very facile and able, capable lawyers and so forth. Don't be surprised when people are taken in. And I'm not really saying that Koresh wasn't sincere. Perhaps he was sincere. But the other thing that really is fundamental here, I did an interview years ago with a government agent who had done 23 years with an agency, and I asked him to do a kind of a summary on things, and he said, well, what I think the American people need to understand, I've been out there for decades of my life, risking my life, so that you can sit at home and you can disagree with me and you can call me a liar. Many places in the country, you can't do that. We had this thing happen with Mount Carmel, with the Branch Davidians, the followers of Koresh, which challenges all of us fundamentally. If it can be done to that group, it can be done to anyone. And this is what this agent was saying, basically, is he's saying you have the right in this country to disagree. In fact, I think Louis Brandeis said that the right to be left alone was one of the highest rights that encompassed all of the other rights, basically, that are guaranteed in the Constitution. And the Constitution does not grant rights to the people. It simply codifies and puts a limit on government. I do disagree with John slightly. Before we had the corruption of the 17th Amendment, the senators could be basically lassoed back, taken out of office by the state legislatures. We had a system of accountability. People were deceived into believing that a popular vote would be better. And I find the term democracy personally repugnant. And this is perhaps more philosophical. Everyone here in this room has been raised in an environment where democracy is spoken of all the time. We love democracy here in this country. Democracy is... Actually, it's not. When you go back to the early military manuals of, I think, the 1920s, they actually speak of democracy as being a bad thing, as being mob rule, that we don't support democracy here. We support a republic with reserved rights to the people, with democratic process for our elected officials who represent us. And there is a difference, because there is that pass not, that area where you cannot go, you cannot transgress. But see, generally it's believed today that if the majority vote for something, well, then that's just the way it is. Everyone else is handcuffed into whatever that is, and they don't have any rights anymore in that area. I've had arguments with attorneys where, this attorney says, well, this is a patriot mythology, that's a patriot mythology, because a judge ruled. I'm like, okay, did a judge grant me my rights that can't be separated from me? No, there's bad judicial decisions all the time. There's bad legislation, there's bad law out there. It doesn't mean that it's a mythology. It may not get you what you want if you're using that argument in a court case. It doesn't mean it's not the truth. I guess that's it.
Okay, who's next? Have we got a next? Come on up here. 5 minutes.
5 minutes. We'll try to keep it below 5 minutes. We were talking about Federal Reserve. I think the quote that I heard was that there's only been 3 countries who got off of paper money and back onto the gold standard. One of them happened to be Mussolini. One of them was Lenin, and the third was Hitler. And I think they all failed in some way or another. Paper money in the long run doesn't work. So it's not a matter of when it collapses, it's a matter of when it collapses, not if it's going to collapse. So I understand what you're saying. I think, as I said last week, I would really like to be one of those that goes out and hits force with force, because I really don't like to see people taken advantage of. It really bothers me to the core. And I think that's what's happening to us right now. We're being taken advantage of. But the more I think about it, the more I figure out that I don't care how well we organize, that's really not going to happen. I look around me and I see our local police force now have tanks, basically. They have SWAT teams that have armored vehicles, and they've now armored our local police with automatic weapons, etc. So it's going after it with force against force. I know we've got militia here in Texas. I've seen them down in Deep East Texas, and I've met the guys that used to be the KKK and that still pass out the literature to this day down in Southeast Texas. So finally I had to come to some other conclusions, and I still remember in the 70s the pollution that was occurring, and the government telling us, don't worry about it, sweetheart, we're not killing you. And the lead's okay. Yeah, I used to work in a lead plant. I actually did some work there as an engineer. But yeah, we were killing people. And Temple East Tex Paper Mill ran their waste up underneath the Nature's River, and they polluted the whole river. And then I remember back in the 80s when all of a sudden the people said, enough's enough. You really are killing us. And it's almost like the 100th monkey happened, and there was a groundswell, and the people said, no, we're not going to do this anymore. And all of a sudden the politicians said, oh shucks, we better pass laws to help you. And they did pass all the laws. Of course, now what I've, in my later wisdom, have discovered is that they've slowly eroded those laws. I see Texas is a great place for industry. Why? Because we let you pollute. We're not going to catch you for OSHA. We aren't going to fine you. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. We're just going to let the business go. So I think it really is that 100th monkey theory. And if anybody not know what the 100th monkey theory is? Everybody knows what the 100th monkey theory is? Okay. Oh, you want me to explain 100th monkey? Okay. The way it was told to me is that there was some islands over in the Pacific. Wasn't really enough food for the monkeys on the island, so they would fly over and they would drop sweet potatoes for the monkeys to eat. And the monkeys were eating their sweet potatoes, doing real fine, and then one little monkey began to go out in the water. He'd rinse off his sweet potato and eat his sweet potato. And then pretty soon another one did it, and another one did it. About the time the 100th monkey did it on this one island, that island over there started the same thing. It was almost like there was a mental thing that clicked into the other island. And the research that I've seen on intention is that 1/10 of the population will make that happen. And there's been a lot of research on this that's been done. What's her name? Taggart was one of the first ones that did a lot of this research. Of course, a lot of it's been, quote, debunked. I'm not so sure that it's real or not. I think it is real. I think, as I mentioned last week, the computers before Princess Diana was killed went crazy the day before. And most major instances, the computers that are churning out these random numbers, they're sensing things that are happening before they're happening. It's really uncanny, but it's happening. And myself, as being a massage therapist and a hands-on healer, I'm amazed at the power that we have. I've done things that I look back and say, how'd that happen? No explanation, but it does.
Who's next? Yeah. Oh, no, let him. Okay, you want me to do a vote? Yeah, get you. Run out of time.
I bet I can do it in less than 5. There's only 2 things I want to say, and I think I'll just be able to do it very quickly. I think it's in 2 Chronicles 7:14 in the Old Testament. Go to the King James Version. I'll let you find it for yourselves. And the next one is Ephesians 6. I'm embarrassing my wife. The next one is Ephesians 6. And I don't know why this verse came to me, but it's one that came to me very strongly. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities in high places. So when there's evil that is taking place, it's on a spiritual level, and us humans are agents. That's it. I did it in far less than 5.
He wants. No, he's been up already. We're gonna let everybody get up here once before we start get up the second time.
Thank you. I think the government announced just recently, or there are some figures available, that the lobbyists have spent $3.3 billion. It was either in 13 or 12. And there are perhaps 11,000 registered lobbyists organizations, the biggest one being AARP, and the next one is AIPAC, American Israeli Political Action Committee. Now, and then perhaps 200,000 unregistered lobbyists. So with all this money influencing Congress like a rudder in a ship, where does our vote count? It seems to me it doesn't. And as the assets in this country are being increasingly polarized, and if you look at the figures since 2008, it's the 1% of the 1%ers who are the ones who are benefiting, and the masses down at the bottom are getting less and less. And I think this is going to be a precursor to civil unrest, where give me your wallet or give me your gun. I think that's going to become increasingly prevalent. Maybe one day a Tom Thumb truck is going to be held up in Oak Cliff or something, and everybody's going to run off with a case of ketchup or mustard. But See, might makes right and power prevails. And that seems to be the format of history, and I think that's what's happening right now. And the standard of living, as a result, is going to continue to decline until something erupts. And unfortunately, when things happen incrementally, people kind of live with it. There's got to be something dramatic. But incrementally, they'll live with it, and pretty soon, everyone will be neutered. So what's the solution? How do we stop this erosion? And if I talk about erosion, one last item, I think, is that the Achilles heel of the society at large is the erosion of morality, if I can make that broad statement. And since that is foundational, we don't have much to look forward to. At least that's my perspective. It's subjective. And what we need to do is hope something really dramatic happens that'll wake everybody up and feel that they are empowered. Because right now I feel like I'm neutered completely. And I'm looking for something where I can take a stand and have an effect for the benefit of not just myself, but for others who are all being subjugated. It's no different than Hitler in the 30s. He ran the show, and everyone went along with him. And we know what happened after that. And we're not immune. We're not immune from any of that. We could all become puppets with time, if we're lucky.
Run out of time. You're up.
This is taking issue. In some sense, I do agree, but in another sense, I don't. Not being a monkey's uncle, I haven't seen a 100th monkey working among humans. And this is one of those kind of come to reality things where, I mean, I spent years in the New Age movement because I didn't run into anyone else who really understood paranormal stuff, so that's kind of where you end up a lot of times in discussing those topics. And I don't really believe the results are in. There is a very interesting gentleman who came over from being a satanic high priest, Mark Passio. I've spoken about his YouTubes before. He seemed to have had his Saul on the road to Damascus experience and came to the realization he really didn't want done to him what he was doing to other people. And it just really came back. He is one of the biggest proponents of, I would say, a really rational look at the situation. And he says, well, yes, we are creative intelligences. Yes, we do have an influence, but we live in the aggregate. You're living in the aggregate of everybody around you, what their wishes, hopes, desires, what they are actually creating in their life. You're living in the backwash of that, so to speak. And if we wish to influence anything in a positive manner, we need to work in the aggregate together with others. This is why it is legitimate to cross boundaries and come together on these fundamental issues which affect us all. Thank you.
I think we're running out of speakers. I guess I'm the last man standing. I want to thank our speaker for tonight. I think he did a great job. You got us all thinking, more classy. Anyway, I have my 2 cents worth. I think that looking at our history, I was interested tonight in what was brought up about the fact you were asked a question about fascism, where are we at? And the question is, what have we become? We got the best Congress money can buy. That's by definition, corporation controlling government is fascism. That's what it is. And that's one of our problems. And that has to be corrected. And that's what we have to concentrate on. Because if we can't do that, we can't change anything. We have to change our Congress. We have to get Congress to represent the people instead of representing the money, the people who are buying their votes. That's what has to happen. Now, the only way I know how to do that might work, would be to get Congress to act in its own self-interest, to instruct the Federal Communications Commission to require the media to provide sufficient free airtime. The airways are free for federal candidates in general elections. They're their views. The last 90 days of an election. That would change everything. Then the congressman would represent the district instead of representing the people in Washington. The incumbent, the challenger might be able to beat an incumbent. If that happened, they'd really represent the district. They would not represent the people buying their money in Washington. That would change everything. Then you could pass laws to put tariffs on corporations that are going overseas to create jobs over there and leave people here with nothing. Like Apple's producing everything in China and has no jobs here. So we don't have the manufacturing. We've lost all the jobs. And this country is like England. We're growing downhill. We know it. And we're over the peak, and other countries are growing, and we're not. And it's not right. And we have to change this. And we have to get people back to work. Another thing that's happened in this society, since the Industrial Revolution, machines replace people. Machines don't pay taxes. I was in the railroad industry. We used to have 5 people working for everyone that's on pension. Now we have 5 people on pension for everyone that's working. That's what's happened. It's automation. It's part of what goes on, but every so often you have to shorten the workday. I'm a believer in a 6-hour day for this country. We put 25 million people back to work, it could happen. And we could shorten the workday, we could not cut the pay, we could do a lot of things. But we can't do that if we can't put tariffs on corporations from going overseas, because none of this is going to work, and we can't do that if we can't change a Congress. So we have to change a Congress. We have to do what we can to improve things. So thank you. Now our speaker gets a comment and close this meeting.
I want to point out to everybody what maybe something you don't know. The National Football League, the National Hockey League, Major League Baseball, and the PGA are all non-profit corporations that don't pay any taxes. Interesting, huh? And then they take tax money and they build colossal stadiums. Huh. If they tax those people, those entities, that might be enough to give everybody free health care. But, yeah, that's right.
Take your mind off what you should be paying attention to.
Right. Now, right, and just to, right. And it's all promotion for the military or psychotropic drugs, and then it's the halftime show with it's a freak show.
Circus.
What?
Circus.
Circus. It's a circus.
Dictators control through fear, and in this business they control through propaganda.
Right.
Still control.
Right. So the question is, okay, and just another thing, just a few miles from here, they built a library to a mass murdering war criminal who lied us into 2 wars. We've got 162 military bases around the world. 100 and, huh?
And scholar.
Yeah. So they've got a whole library full of coloring books. Anyway, okay, so, but Bush wasn't that stupid when he was governor. So I think a lot of that's theater. But anyway, whatever. Prescott Bush. Anybody know who Prescott Bush was? The grandfather of W, the father of HW, a Nazi banker. He was a Nazi banker. Look it up, Prescott Bush, and you'll see that the Congress penalized him and took his bank away from him. And it's on congressional record. And then Operation Paperclip was after World War II when the United States brought back as many of the Nazi scientists and Nazi leaders as they could get. And Russia took the rest of them. And there was all this competition, and then it was the Russians against the Americans and all that stuff, and the space race and blah, 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 all that stuff. So my question is, what's the answer? What's the breakthrough? What does it look like when it's done right? How do we make it shift? And I like your ideas, but I mean, how do we get there? We're still arguing over Nancy Pelosi and John Boehner. You know, I mean, we're arguing over Clinton or Bush or Obama or Nixon or, I mean, you know, we got to get out of the shallow end of the pool. And we're in the kiddie pool, actually. Water's kind of yellow, but so we got to make a breakthrough. So that would be my question, I guess. Leaving my last comment is, what would be the 10 things, the top 10 of your list to have Congress do to effect real change? What would you want? Or forget Congress, what we do, because Congress ain't gonna do it ever, because they're owned, bought and sold, and they've got so much compromise on them. They know the NSA and everybody knows, and all these people, and yeah, the NSA and all that know about the hookers they get on the side, or the little boys, or the payoffs, or the under the table pay, or whatever. They know all that stuff. So all these guys are compromised. There may be a handful that aren't, but okay. Anyway, so what would be the top 10 things we need to do? That would be the question. And I've tried to get that question asked in Austin and here, and
educate ourselves.
Okay, educate ourselves. How about in the Federal Reserve?
Get rid of the tax.
Get rid of it. Huh?
You're playing idiots with the audience that's watching you. When they talk, they can't hear.
Oh.
Repeat what he says. That's it. Just repeat what he says.
Okay. What'd you say?
You know, get rid of payola, get rid of the tax.
Get rid of the PACs, yeah?
Right now, the money comes in incognito. I mean, Putin could be putting money in. We don't
Right.
know that. And until that system is eliminated, it's money by government.
Well, the Supreme Court just ruled too that corporations now have an unlimited amount that they can give because they're persons, and they can give to any candidate they want. And what they tend to do is give to both sides.
As long as they have money, men, and munitions,
Right.
they'll run the show.
Right.
Those three.
Okay. I'll vote for bring all of our troops home. And get them the treatment that they need. Okay. Okay.
Putting up tariffs so we don't have to compete with the labor in Vietnam or China.
Right, yeah.
That sounds anti-libertarian.
And bring our jobs back home.
80% of the inventory that Walmart sells comes from China. That's right.
Right, and they used to have proud to be made in the USA all over the Walmarts. Used to be 20 years ago. And you could go to Walmart and have pride that you're buying American products. You know, not anymore. You go to the Academy or someplace now, try to find a pair of shoes that wasn't made in overseas somewhere in China or Vietnam or someplace. You know, it's tough. So I finally found one. They're made in Boston. Had to pay a lot more for them, but I did. Anyway, okay.
Okay, we have to be out of here by 9. They close here at 9, and we generally go down to Starbucks. So you're all welcome. Our speaker is welcome, and we can work on him some more. And we'll buy him some coffee down there, so that's how that works. So you're all welcome to come down to Starbucks. That's it for tonight. Thank you. Oh, yeah, go ahead. He wants to say.
This is William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like us, or follow us, and get notices of all our videos. We love it even when you call. So when visiting the Barbeck's restaurant, tell them you want your reservation to the next College and Complex class.